Hey, we're live. Welcome to the Killer Be Kill podcast, instructor special. Again, we've got guys from Texas, guys from New Orleans, and of course Canada. Josh, I think you're muted. I'm going to unmute you. Okay, yeah, we're good. All right. So, yeah, man, thanks for taking the time, fellas. It's good to meet some of you and, of course, see you guys again. Let's get into it. I mean, what prompted this is like on the instructor forum, we were talking about what the hell started in the UK.
Yep.
Because all I'm hearing about is here, and I get like these suppressed. I try not to pay. I don't watch the news a lot at all, really. I mostly just listen to like podcasts with stuff that I'm interested in. But now we got, the election and all that's going on. So the reality is I'm like, personally, I don't, I think we're the only ones with these problems. But then what kind of prompted it was when the UK announced that they will try to prosecute people out of the country for shit they're saying on social media, which is insane. All of what I'm seeing now is ultra right wing response to what happened in the UK with the incident where Muslim immigrant, stabbed, I think it was one or two girls at like a Taylor Swift kind of event. So, and then Josh Kaywood brought up some great points about the mindset over there when it comes to how they regard. I mean, this was based on this is what we're talking about. Even the thought of the UK just going into another sovereign country and exercise and again arresting somebody for what we consider would be freedom of speech. When we talk about freedom of speech, it's personally, again, and I'm not the only one who shares the sentiment, it's actually the right of somebody to say something that you disagree with, or that's even hate speech. Because there comes a point where who determines what, right? I mean, ultimately, we determine what is right and wrong. I don't need somebody that's an elected official. I mean, I don't think I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm not the dumbest, and I can figure out what what I want, what I want to listen to, what I want to believe, and even the whole notion of being offended. It's like I'm literally impossible to offend. I'm going to think you're an asshole or not, or we're going to disagree on something, or maybe I'm going to learn something. What the hell do I know? Right. So, we're starting, I guess, I mean, we're seeing that. We saw it in Australia. We saw freedom of speech being squashed in Australia during COVID. Where they're arresting people for things that were posting on their social media, and these are just opinions. And it really kind of, we're seeing what's happening globally now with what's happening in the U.S. with the wokeness, with there's it's just this ultra. I mean, should we be sensitive? Should you be compassionate? Totally. I mean, that's the idea is that that you're not. You should be understanding, and as we get older, we get hopefully we get a little bit more wisdom, when it comes to understanding people who don't agree with us and maybe why they don't agree with us. So we'll start, from that, perspective of, what's happening with, free speech and now the frustration that people are feeling. And this is why, people just don't decide to get out and, protest and riot. Right. I mean, this is like a culmination of a lot of many, many, many events that have been happening. So people do it because they feel, frustrated, unrepresented, and scared, to be quite honest. So, when we're looking at what's happening over in the UK to start. I'm like, okay, I'm bet you some of them are wishing they had a Second Amendment, but but honestly, it's like this is getting worse. And now that it's coming to the fore, even like shit, I just listened to someone talk about Sweden, for crying out loud. Where they're getting overrun with, the danger on the daily is just escalating, because this is now, it's infecting, people's personal lives. They feel unprotected. They feel not represented. And here we are, right? I'm like, and this is what happens. Yeah. Anybody can, jump in.
It's so interesting, right? Because you talk about shit that's going on in the world. We talk about the freedom of speech and all this shit, and I'm sitting here up in fucking Canada on social media, man. Our asses are fucking censored from seeing everything that's going on in the fucking world, anyways. We don't fucking get no news on social media, right? Like, I don't know if you follow that, but the shit's actually censored here for us.
Right. Well, it's censored here for us too. I'm telling you right now, because if I try to Google something, and then all the other search engines are derivative. I mean, I'll try Brave, I'll try DuckDuckGo, but they're all using that algorithm, and it's curated. So I can't find, what happened with, like, if you look up Muslim crime UK, right? I'm just going to get the whole, like, couple pages of, right-wing protests against, Muslims, right? Racism, and you'll get all of that, which is definitely happening, but I'm not getting what I'm looking for.
So I don't know, man. And in all fairness to everything going on, I'd probably shank myself too if I was at a fucking Taylor Swift concert. But sorry, Taylor.
Right. So I mean, now we're here we are in this election. Again, whatever you want to call it, a coup. I don't know if I was in. If I could vote in the Democratic primary, I'd be a little pissed off right now, because whoever's running is not it's not someone who's elected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, there's that.
All right. So before we jump into way too many different topics,
of course, anytime, man, jump in, please.
You jumped from the stabbing at the Taylor Swift concert and then started talking about First Amendment rights.
Right. Right.
But you forgot the context. So what happened was,
please go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Right. And then people all over the world started talking about it. Right. And then one of the lead British police people, I don't know who it is exactly, but he decided that he was going to try to extradite Americans and others for exercising their opinions in their own countries.
Correct.
Right. So that's a huge piece that got missed. So just for the people watching, that's the background on the freedom of speech and all that stuff. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah. And I assume, right. Go.
So, man, there's so many things to talk about with this. You hit on like so many different points.
Well, you guys got to jump in and shut me up, because I'll just
actually can I ask a question? Because I'm a guy that's kind of made a news media fast for the past 2 years, ever since the mighty deadly thing that happened in 2020. This thing that was going to kill everybody. And so I was like, this is nonsense. And so I stopped. And so maybe somebody could fill in, a guy like me, on exactly the things that have been happening. Has this been spreading? Is this local to just the UK, or is this going all over Europe? Is this spreading? Does it seem like it's going to start happening in America and Canada? Or could maybe somebody can fill in on that?
That's the whole reason why we're having this discussion, actually, is because we wanted to talk about how it's not isolated to just the UK, right? And how the conditions that occurred in the UK are actually setting up and occurring all over the world, right? Particularly here.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Because I mean, things from my standpoint, like, it happens over in Europe, it happens over the UK, then it fucking filters its way to the US, ultimately fucking filtering up to, the US is fucking bitch us. And that's, we're kind of the last to fucking get it. But it's just interesting watching how that progression actually happens, right? And there's usually about a year or two, maybe 3, kind of in between before it kind of travels that whole fucking railway, so to speak.
Yeah, which is interesting, George, because I mean, just a couple of years ago, you guys had that Freedom Convoy roll through, right?
That's right.
Right, where they were seizing assets of people who were donating to the convoy, right? Yeah. And so, right. If you don't remember, that's when the trucker convoy went through Canada, and to protest the lockdowns, and then your boy Trudeau and it just started like anyone who donated, they froze their assets, which is insane. It's insane.
Yeah, Trudeau is he's a piece of fucking work. That guy.
To know where it's happening is Canada, UK. I mean the European Union. It's not happening in places like Poland. It's not happening in Russia. Where. Right. They're just like, I mean, what did Putin just put out? He's like, hey, if you're tired of the woke shit, we'll give you citizenship. Come on over, man. So there's it's ripping through, and what you're seeing now. I mean, technically it's like when it starts in the US, I think it takes several months for it to get to Europe. What's happening though is like, they don't have the stringent freedom of speech laws that we have. So, you're seeing it kind of accelerate. You're seeing it kind of accelerated where they're now you're seeing what happens. They're locking people up. I think the number in UK was something like 300 people, and for what they posted on social media. And I don't know what they posted. But unless it was like, I'm going to kill my neighbor, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know each case individually, but
are these mostly knife attacks, or is there small arms involved?
Not in the UK. I think it's mostly edged weapons. I had read
it's mostly edged weapons in the UK. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about fucking tight laws, right? Like Australia, UK have like crazy fucking tight laws regarding any kind of weapons. But even still, you still have a high fucking incidence of violence there, and it's nasty.
So that goes for like really any of the European nations, Australia, a lot of those, even like South Korea, Japan, places like that, where firearms are pretty much super locked down, right? So you don't see firearm violence, but that doesn't mean violence doesn't happen, right? Actually, the violence numbers increase if you look at the actual statistics because of firearms, right? Like when I was in South Korea, they talked about how nobody has firearms. Like even as a service member, you can't take your firearms unless you get special permission. And so, but what they talked about was like the machete gangs and the butcher gangs, right? They carry like butcher knives, like legit butcher knives and like machetes, and they go around and like butcher up people.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, please give me the service and just put a bullet through me, please.
Right.
Holy crap! Yeah, so we think like these places are set up as examples and success stories, but they're being overrun, and now you're seeing it boil over. And the problem is, it's like they don't have the citizens are frustrated because they're not their means to defend themselves are limited, and their right to defend themselves is limited. I think Marcus, one of the instructors from Germany, was talking about how a girl was sexually assaulted, and then they I guess again, you guys remember the post, they convinced her to not press charges. It was crazy. And you're seeing it you're seeing it here in the US. I mean, shit, New York, it wasn't too long ago where a couple of guys from Venezuela assaulted a police officer, and they let him out like the same day. It's insane.
Yeah. So speaking to that, I mean, Damian, George, you guys probably remember I used to work in the in-school suspension.
Yep.
And anytime there was a fight or whatever, they would send the kids to my office or to my classroom. And I can't tell you how many times somebody would get in a fight defending themselves, right? So they would defend themselves. They get sent to my room, and within minutes, the administrators and the police would show up, and they would convince them not to press charges.
Wow.
The way they would convince them was, well, if you press charges against them, we are going to press charges against you for also inflicting violence, even though it was defense.
Jesus.
Holy shit. I mean, you it's not surprising because you do see that reflected in college campuses too, especially with sexual assault against women. You'll go in and be like, well, did you really know him? So one of the things, so when I was there's a thing called the Cleary Act, and there was a girl, Jeannie Cleary. She was a freshman before I went to Lehigh. She was a freshman before I went there, so she was a year older than me. She was brutally raped and murdered by another student, right? So now the Cleary Act, where now all universities and have to make available their the crime statistics and what's going on. So they will do whatever's in their best interest to squash this shit. And it's a weird thing. You're like, well, you're not really hurt, or did you date him? Did you say no? Did you? And there was one that was there's a special on Netflix too. It's like Victim Accused, where these women were getting sexually assaulted. Again, we're seeing, of course, I get it. Certain things are probably edited in a way, that are, that skew the presentation, but they go in as like, hey, I want to report a crime. And the next thing you know, they're getting processed and arrested. So anytime, like with my daughter, especially, I mean, all of my kids, I'm like, first words out of your mouth are lawyer, whether you're assaulted or not. I mean, and this goes for everybody. I'm like, you just got to be like, depending on where in the situation you are, but for the most part, I'm like, you get a lawyer, even if you're a victim. And because the next thing you know, you're getting questioned in a way where you'll get, prosecuted. I mean, you saw the other special is American Nightmare. That was crazy because so couple is at home and they perceive two men come in and kidnap them. So they drug them. They make them drink some shit. The guy passes out. The girl gets abducted and raped for like multiple days. And then afterwards, she gets like let out someplace randomly, like a couple 100 miles away from her home. Right. So they go report it to police. They treat it like it's the movie Gone Girl, like she made this all up. And it turns out that the guy does it again. It comes into another jurisdiction, and another cop who does the right thing. She's like, well, whose blonde hair is this? Who's this? Who's that? Remembers the case. They find up wanting to, they want to find a putting a collar on a guy because, one cop did the right job. You had like two, you had like one cop that did just like shit, and they just, they literally, had a press conference and were, ridiculing her for making them spend all this money to investigate the case. They had the kids, the boyfriend's cell phone. They turned it off. He's like, she's kidnapped. They have my cell phone number. The cop's like, okay, they turned it off. The perpetrator's trying to call the guy, and he never fucking got through because the phone was turned off. I mean, it's like the whole thing is insane. It's insane. But people go into things, and I know we're get off the rails, but this is how these things work. People go into things with a predetermined, mindset of what they think this thing should be. Like if I said, hey, Josh, we think this guy's, a real piece of shit. I need you to build a case against him. So you're going to sit on him and collect evidence and, build a case. And you're going to do it. You're going to look at it in a way based on a predetermined outcome, not seeking the truth or gathering facts. You're like, okay, I gotta make it, this is the guy. So now I'm building a case against him. So that's human nature. Right. So you think like things are objective, and they're not. It's so any step of the way with any of that shit, you need representation, and you got to be careful about what you say, because you think you're like telling the truth and telling your story because you've been wronged, and they're like, well, I don't know, like some of these cases with the previous story, some of the guys who were accused were like politically connected, or so, then it was, all right, well, maybe she was just drunk. Maybe she was just this. They come in. The one thing we do that's fucked up is that we're allowed to lie to suspects.
Yes.
We can say that, oh, we have videotape on you doing it, or, oh, your friend just said that you did it. You can do all this shit to try to get a confession out of somebody. And that's got to change. That's the one thing Europe doesn't do. Right? They can't lie to a suspect. So I don't know how the hell we got here, but we did. And this is what happens when you let me fucking talk. So, getting back to, what's happening, globally, where it's, you think it's bad here. I mean, the only thing that's keeping us together is the first two amendments. I mean, shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a moment. Have you guys heard of the documentary that's coming out? Some dude's producing it called Treason.
No.
So there's I only saw an interview of the guys producing it, and he talked a little bit about it and some of the stuff he's finding out. But essentially, this guy was a senior supervisor for Border Patrol agents.
Mm-hmm.
And he's retired now, and he's going around and he's interviewing cities and like the populations, and just going all around and figuring things out, because he's seeing that all these illegals that have been let in, to him that's treason, right? And so he goes to Chicago. So his interview, he's talking about his time in Chicago, and he's talking about how one, it doesn't look like an American city. It's a third world country now.
Right.
And two, they are one incident away, similar to what happened in the UK, from all-out war there. He said every single person he talked to, and he talked to thousands, it didn't matter if they were a cook, it didn't matter if they were a gang warlord, whoever he talked to, they said all of them said they are one incident away from all-out war. And we're talking about a city in America, right? And that's just, and he says, and that's just, that city is just an example of all these other cities he's gone to, right? How all these refugee cities are one incident away from war. And then he points out, the obvious that, anybody who's tracking the immigration situation knows is the vast majority of these people coming through are military-aged males.
Right.
So you have the question, what are they here for? Well, according to what he's finding is most of them are, cartel soldiers who are here to set up shop in America. Right.
It sounds like they're just being sleeper cells, like just waiting for waiting for the green light.
You do have sleeper cells as well. I mean, the amount of terrorists, known terrorists that they've caught that have also been in is insane, right? So you got sleeper cells of terrorism, you got sleeper cells of UN who are here, you got the sleeper cells of the cartels. Then you have the open cells, right? So the cartels, they just set up shop and start doing crime, right? And then you have, you take a place like Chicago, which is already crime ridden, and now you have all these warlords, gang warlords, from our own gang warlords, who are now being pushed out, right? Because the government is saying you have to give these people space, and they don't want to lose their territory that they fought for, right? So they're like, we're just waiting for one reason. That's it. We just need one reason. And they're talking about how they're armed to the teeth, guns and magazines and blah 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 blah, and they're just waiting. There's the one trigger, right? Well, what happens when that one trigger occurs is it starts popping off all over the place, right? You get incident here, incident here, incident here. A lot of people have talked about, what does the next civil war in America look like? And it's not like it was in the 1800s, right? The next civil war in America is going to be conflict here, conflict here, conflict here, conflict here. And how does it affect you, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're already at the fourth turning, right? So, I'm sure some people are, familiar with that book where it's basically every 80 years, every generation goes through an iteration. It's like, first it's like springtime, everything's great. Then there's like an awakening, and then there's crisis, and then there's fucking chaos, right? So it's like, if you look at like World War II was chaos, then you came out in the 50s, right? Everybody was like, America's great, everything's perfect. And the next generation's like, do I need like, 2.2 kids and a house? And, maybe, I want to do, and then it's like, okay, then they get into chaos, which is, Vietnam War coming out and, questioning the government, questioning authority. And now we're getting into chaos where it's like we're split. You've got, everybody is, just, you've got these insane, it's like they've like their political ideologies, it's like their religion, right? And it's, they're so wrapped up into their identity is what you believe in. I don't care if it's like whether you want to get vaccinated or not. It's like everything. When the hell was like that a fucking thing, right? When you're looking at one. Hey, look, let's face it. When I was growing up, it was like Democratic Party was like free speech, fucking anti-corporation, anti-war, and I was like the fucking opposite. I mean, we're in like perpetual wars. I got like, believe it or not, I got like liberal friends, and they're like, all about like pharma and all that. I go, dude, I'm like, what happened to you? It's, so, it's like now we've got these lines drawn, and they just keep adding more shit to it. Immigration, these people are coming in unchecked. An open border is not open borders don't make a country. I mean, that's just
Right.
That's what literally defines a fucking country. And if all these people were coming in through a point of entry, like an airport, wouldn't happen. It's like these people, like the same people who are like, who tell me, they're like, oh yeah, well, it's okay, they're refugees. I go, dude, you travel around the world. I go, try leaving your passport at home. What the hell happens then? So now you're getting, groups of people in here, that are, yeah, okay, I get it. There should be a way for us to, efficiently process people who are coming in, but then you're also dealing with nations that are just shipping these people out that really don't want them, right? You're not coming here because you're killing it in, Yugoslavia, right? Or China, you know what I mean? You're not coming here because life is fucking great. You're coming here because, okay, that sucked. Best case scenario, that sucked. I'm going to go get a better life for my family. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, they're flooding the jails, mental institutions, and sending over, military combatants and the cartels is an obvious. I'm like, you're sitting there telling me that everybody who comes through here, and one of the funny arguments I used to like to make is during COVID, where it's like, well, what if they all have COVID? Right? I'm like, aren't you gonna, don't you want to at least test them?
No.
So, yeah, and now the difference there's a huge difference between somebody coming over here want to make a better life for themselves and buying into the American life and the American dream than people who want to come over here and just do the shit that they got kicked out of their other country for doing, or subversive, be a subversive. This is like shit. So, now, on a personal level, like you're dealing with people who do not share the same values, do not have the same intent. Everybody likes to, project, their good feelings on these people, and they'll hold up somebody who is the exception proving the rule, right? So, they'll have somebody who's come in, or, they'll be like, well, look at this person. Say, yeah, I get these people who need a better life, want to come here, and we want them, right? But then just, come through, a come through the right fucking way, man.
Yeah.
You know, why?
So, I don't know if you remember, Damian. You probably remember, Josh. You probably remember, but like mid 2000s, you know, like 2008, 2009, 2010 ish, somewhere around there. They had the Dreamers. You guys remember that?
I remember.
You know, so we're talking about people whose parents came in illegally, and they, you know, came in as little kids, and they were illegal, right? But they wanted to be here to do good things, right? We're talking about people who are trying to go to school, people who are trying to get jobs, people who are trying to better themselves, people who are trying to join the military, right? You know, wanted to do the right thing to the country that they grew up in and now love, right? We're talking about, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago, people coming here, like you said, Damian, because they want a better life, you know, versus what we're getting now, which is, so that guy who's doing that documentary, he puts the number at roughly 45 million illegals have come in the last 2 years. Right now, the Democrats and everybody else are willing to say that we're upwards of like 12 million, which is still way too many, right? I mean, that's bigger than some states, right?
Yeah.
Total populations,
right?
But they're saying it's probably closer to 45 million. Of those 45 million, I mean, being here in Texas, we get videos all day long of people literally just filming the people coming across. And it's like military, you know, and they're all just military age males, and they know where they're going. They're on assignment. It's like, where are you going? Chicago, Detroit, New York, Chicago, Detroit, New York. Like, they know where they're going as they're coming in, you know? So here now we have, you know, upwards of 45 million, at least 12 million military age males who are not here necessarily for a better life. Even if you took 50%, right? That means there's still 6 million people here intending to do harm.
Right. I mean, and even if it's like, let's say 10% of them, right? It's fucking 600,000 fucking people.
Yeah. How many people does it take to create chaos?
11.
Right. Not a lot, right? It doesn't take
You know, a buddy of mine is a federal judge, and him and he's like about 60 other judges. All they do is hear immigration cases. So he goes, first, he's like, all the ones that came in prior to this administration, he goes, they just kicked out. I'm not kicked out of the country. They just not hearing the cases. And he goes, now, he goes, we have like millions of cases to hear. Again, he goes, there are like 3 lifetimes of us hearing cases. Oh, and by the way, if they don't show up, they can't have them deported. There's no ramification for them to actually show up.
They just reschedule the date for like 2 years from now.
Yeah, and just keep fucking rescheduling. Yep.
Yeah, and if they don't show up, it doesn't matter. So while you're thinking there's nothing happening, and they're, you know, again, we can get into, you know, they're getting money, they're getting housing, they're getting cell phones, and now
they're also treated with diplomatic immunity too,
right?
You know, so like they were talking about the ones in Chicago and New York and stuff, where like they can buy cars, they can drive around, they don't need a license, they don't need license plates, and the cops can't stop them because they have diplomatic immunity. So you're talking about people who are here, literally can do whatever they want, no repercussions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you know, look, I mean, again, like it's like the no bail thing. I get why it kind of, you know, because look, I mean, let's steel man this for a second. If we're guilty, if we're innocent before proven guilty, right? And you get arrested and you're like, okay, well, you got to post bail. Well, I don't have the money to post bail. So you're going to incarcerate somebody before they actually, you know, right? So I get what they're doing there, but there's just, you know, and it's, especially if it's a violent crime, you know, it's one thing if it's a nonviolent offense, but if you're accused of something that, you know, hell, you know, you didn't do, right? And well, you got to, you know, you can, you know, you've got to, you know, and if you don't have the means to post bail, you're going to start doing time, you know, before your trial date. So I get it, but the reality of what's happening, it's not working at all. So, you know, that's got to be something that's got to be looked at. I mean, if you're in this country illegally, if I went and I don't know, pull some shit in, Canada, I'm sure I'm probably either going to jail or get deported, like right the fuck away. Right? I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen if I'm in another country, another democratic country, not like China or Russia, because then you're fucking fucked beyond fucked and goodbye, or Thailand or yeah, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, I'm like, and now we're dealing as a, on a personal defense level. I mean, we're dealing with people who, again, don't share our same views and our ideas on society. They're here, a lot of them, let's face it, what we're seeing from the criminal element is that they're just here to take. And this is what you're up against, right? They have nothing to lose. And they don't, and there's no recourse for it. I mean, you're unprotected. So what's happening is what we're seeing is that people are fighting back, and it's fucking.
I love that you just came full circle. Great. Now we can jump back into it. So that's what happened. So that's what happened.
He does that. We always do come full circle, bud.
We always do. I gotta wait for it. It takes like 40 minutes.
Literally. I'm 4 minutes ahead of schedule.
A few little fucking pit stops along the way, but it's good.
They had an incident, and now you have all these people who are fed up with the situation, right? People who feel like their voices aren't being heard, and they feel like nothing's being done, right? So a situation occurs, they know nothing's going to happen, or they assume nothing's going to happen. They assume nobody's going to hear them. So what do they resort to? Mob justice, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way they went about this mob justice was probably not the best.
I mean, yeah, marauding. Maybe again, I don't know what happened, but I'm guessing it was attacking a lot of people of dark complexion.
They attacked a lot of Muslims, and they attacked a couple mosques.
Yeah.
I personally would stay away from religious centers. I think that's a no-go.
Right. Yeah, right.
But it's indicative of their feelings, right? Of how the frustrations that they're feeling,
Yeah.
And so how does that, and this is why I want to do the podcast, right? Which was, how does that translate to us in protecting ourselves, right? Being aware of these feelings that everybody's having of not being heard, of the situations not being taken care of the government and those who are supposed to protect you just don't give a damn, right? So what do we do to protect ourselves in these situations?
Right.
Take it, Damian.
I mean,
and too, Josh. I mean, the first thing is, you're hitting the nail on the head too, talking about the fucking volatility of everything that's going on, right? And I mean, people need to be taking care of themselves. They need to stop fucking relying on the government. I mean, we don't rely on the fucking government up here anymore. I mean, the best advice our government had fucking not too long ago was, hey, if people want to break in and fucking take your shit, let them break in and take your shit. It's like,
because they'll most likely be armed. That's
right.
That was the fucking direct quote from law enforcement. Let them in. They're most likely. Well, aren't guns illegal? How did he get a gun?
Yep. Did we ban those?
Wasn't it the Toronto chief of police who said, "Put your car keys outside, so if they want to take your car,
basically leave it outside." What the fuck?
Put them in a little ashtray, like in your door, right? So they don't have to come in your house that far.
Yeah,
that's right. And for all the fucking rapists, why don't we put our daughters outside the fucking front door too? Like what? Jesus.
Right. I just, it's like this is not. Again, you're talking about your basic right for self-fucking preservation, and it's like, no, oh yeah, he'll just take it. Oh, insurance will cover it or whatever, and you're just like, again, it just falls back on that instead of holding somebody accountable and allowing you to fucking protect your shit, right? So getting back to Josh's point, I'm like, look, this all comes down to the same shit, right? You got to be able to pay attention. Right. So if you're going don't participate in these stupid fucking things, no matter how pissed off you are. Right.
Do not participate. I agree. Do not participate.
What do you do? Don't. Right. Don't go to a protest. Don't go to a march. Don't go to a fucking sit-in or whatever the fuck you're gonna do. Just don't do it. Right? It's like there's nothing. Write your congressman. You can. I'll allow you to post on whatever bullshit you're on. Do that shit. Don't show up. I get it. And look, I tell you, if like something happened to like one of my loved ones or close friends, like that was tragic. I'm like, I'm not going to go protest. I mean, it is going to be a different course of action that I'm going to take, which will have, hopefully, a desired outcome, regardless of what happens to me. Right. So that's, you make your peace with God and you do what you do. But, so when you're doing these things, fucking don't do it. Right. If you happen to, pay attention, if you're seeing crowds, right, just change course of action, get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Do not expose yourself because, once you're in there, you can get overwhelmed really, really quickly. I mean, yeah, you have your everyday carry. If you can carry a firearm, great. Armor, great. Pepper, whatever it is, you have it just in case you get jammed up trying to get the hell out of there. Right. Again,
and just just to jump in, you're talking about these crowds right now, and I mean, people are bringing their fucking wives, they're bringing their fucking kids to these goddamn things. Like you're putting children in fucking danger to boot.
Yeah, they're morons. I'm like, it's like, what are you doing? And the kids don't stand a chance. I'm like, why would you? I don't care how strongly you feel, dude. I don't go to like political rallies or anything like that. I have zero desire to freaking do this shit. Right. So, to go and, put yourself out there becoming a target in a target rich environment is ludicrous. So, this is happening. I know you feel strongly about it and you're upset, but don't let the people with the IQs of 85 and under go, and then the rest of us fucking stay the fuck home. Again, also know that if, the way the climate is now, like you've got to be like really, really, really in a position where you can justify whatever it is you do. Right. So you're going there and you're, look, they have provocateurs. That's been proven. Right. I mean, there's, on both sides, they got dudes that are just fucking stuff up that work for the government, so, you're putting you're exposing yourself to something that, is just a completely unnecessary risk. So getting back to, you've got to be completely justified in when you decide to use force to protect yourself and your loved ones, period. That's just what it is. So if you put yourself in these situations, you automatically are kind of abdicating part of that because you're, Mr. Kaywood, what were you doing at the protest? Oh, were you looking to crack some heads? Were you looking to do? I mean, it's really easy for it to get twisted and moved around on you. And, that's it, man. So,
so you bring up an interesting point about, just stay home, don't go to these things, which 90% of the time I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely. In this country, at least, we have the right to peaceful protest, right? Which should absolutely be exercised, but there are proper forums for peaceful protest.
Right.
Showing up and what's that?
Like, for example,
your town hall.
Right.
Going to your town hall and voicing your opinion. That's what it's for.
Yes.
Right? The peaceful protest.
Right. Yeah.
That's one example, right?
Right.
Getting the news involved, right? Where it's like now the press is there and it's not just you and some dude, right? You're just like some guy. Like, no, the press is now involved because you told them about something that's an issue and they actually want to cover it, right?
Right.
There's means and forums that make peaceful protest viable and also important, right? Because peaceful protest is important, right?
100%.
Opinion.
And the only place you're really going to get your voice heard is if you do go to your town council meeting. You're going to sit through. Chances are, if a lot of people show up, because I've been to these things and I've participated in those, for sure. So, shit's going on wrong in your town, get your ass down there, right?
Yeah.
You don't like what's going on, do that. And if enough people show up, you're not going to have to sit through all the other, point of order bullshit. They're going to want to hear your stuff first early.
Yeah. Just to bring it back to what Damian was saying is like, this is for people with IQs higher than 80. You understand? Like most people are they get on the street. What do? They smash stuff. They go to their local freaking shoe shop and they start stealing everything. And then they're saying, "Oh, we're peacefully protesting." They said peacefully protesting all throughout 2020. Oh, they're peacefully protesting. Because and they were saying that when buildings were on fire behind them.
That was
like peaceful protesting.
But someone said free Nikes, and I had to go. I went.
Yeah. And that's I think that's what's important is to know about talking about don't get involved with when you see these groups outside that have this massive mob out there. I don't know, like in New Orleans during the Black Lives Matter protests and everything and all this when they were doing all that, that was just mob rule. It wasn't organized. It wasn't peaceful. They were tearing stuff up. And so if you see that, don't get involved. Don't get involved with any of that nonsense, even if it's something you believe in.
Yeah, that brings me to the second point that Damian was saying, which is, getting caught up, right?
Yep.
He's coming back.
Yeah,
There you go.
you're
Back.
caught up in two ways in that situation, right? You can get caught up either into the frenzy and you start destroying stuff, or you get caught up as now you're the target of that frenzy, and you don't want either of those.
Right. You bring up a great point. And while we're sitting here, it's like, what happens during a fight, right? So it's one thing to say, oh, I could probably do this, I'll probably do that. But you said getting caught up, and that is so real that people got to understand. So that if you're, if this is going on around you, you can very well get swept up. It's part of that tribal mentality, where you're like, okay, this is what we're doing. We got to go to war. Right. So, don't know. Like when
you see it in fucking street altercations, right? It's that fucking wolf pack mentality, right?
Yeah. Well, they were just like, who the hell was it? It's like, I forget what it was after one of the NHL championships up in your neck of the woods, George, where, it was like after they lost and then I forget. And they all these kids were just like destroying shit. And then later they're like, I don't know what happened what overcame me. That is something to consider because while you're sitting here thinking, I wouldn't want to do that. I'm like, next thing you know, you're like, this feels fucking awesome, and let's go. And and you literally lose your mind. And that is what that literally means. So, the more you can avoid these types of situations, and you may get caught in the wave and it could be too late, right? Like you're all of a sudden, you don't know how you're going to react. You don't, so it's best to not do that and sit through a council meeting where you're, exhausted. Or if you start seeing if you start seeing people standing around with nothing else to do, get the fuck out of there. Because eventually someone's going to do some stupid shit. And that's when it starts going off. And now you're caught up in it. Even like shit with January 6th, right? How many people are just kind of you're watching all of a sudden, you see people breaking in, but then you see I don't know, 9 officers giving the dude with the fucking the bison helmet on a tour of, so, you could just be wandering around and get caught up in this, and then wind up getting pulled into this shit because you were there. So, Josh, again, great point. You want to, go where the problem is, go to where the decisions are made and voice your opinion there.
The getting caught up as well. We talk a lot about the physical crowds and getting caught up that way. But with the way media is nowadays, especially in polarizing people, it's very easy to get caught up in the wrong groups, right? You mentioned the tribe, right?
Yeah.
And the tribe is such a strong desire, right?
Yes.
There's a really great book called The Tribe.
Right. Yes.
And it's all about this.
Yeah. I read it. Yeah.
You know, it's you start finding people that you feel like you resonate with. But if that group keeps spiraling and radicalizing, right? They talk about the process of extremism, you know, how it's not just you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to be extreme, right? It's a process, right? And if you're all of a sudden you realize, or maybe you don't realize that now you're an extremist group and people are like, hey, let's go do this. And you're like, yeah, let's go do it. And you haven't even shown up yet.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. And that's where we are. Right. So, and this, we talk about the mind virus, right? Look, I brought it back. And then, you know,
I knew it was coming. I knew it.
You know, so, you know, this is what, and you don't even know why you're doing it. You're just fucking doing it. And it just feels right because now, you know, different parts of your brain are being, you know, activated. And look, we've all been a part of like teams, you know, you guys served, you know, where you're like, okay, you know, there's nothing, that feeling of being next to somebody that you fucking trust in that moment, it's like I miss it every fucking day. You know, when you're into some shit, like, I mean, look, I got, you know, you got I got a family now and it's, you know, I got that but it's like that moment where you're like, okay, someone could get really fucked up right now, but we got to go forward and we got to deal with this shit. Right. So, you know, like that feeling, it's like, you know, when you know that at least at that moment in time, the dude could be, you know, maybe he's an asshole, maybe he's not, but for the most part, we're all getting this shit done. I mean, when it's there, I'm like, holy crap. So, you know, it hits you on such a, you know, a primal level that, you know, when people are getting sucked into this stuff, they don't even know, you don't know what's happening, you know, and you don't know why. And it's like, yeah, getting like marginally radicalized like every day. It's just, you know, it's like, you know, the frog in the boiling pot of water. Man. Next thing you know, it's just like shit gets normalized. It's like, okay, we're gonna go fucking blow up a car dealership. You know, I don't, right? I'm like, this is what we're doing, and these are people who, you know, most of which look like they've never like played a contact sport or like, you know, had been in like the ring or done anything of any significance, you know, physically. Next thing you know, they're all like ready to kick ass and take names. Right. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? You know, like, go lift some weights for a little bit and come back. I don't know. You know? So it's just like, I don't know, man.
But that's the power of the mob. That's what mob mentality does. It makes powerful people in hordes of weak people, you know. Hordes of weak people are pretty scary, you know.
Yeah, because, you know, shit gets tiring. I mean, fast. You know, it's like, oh, your tank will run out pretty quick. You know, it's just like, you know, so yeah, I said, like, now where we are, you know, it's like we're trying to, you know, we got to, you know, repair, you know, what the hell is happening. And hopefully at some point, you know, like it's going to be, because it's, Josh has said, it's already, the revolution's already happening. It's happening in, you know, these dense city populations, you know, where it's gonna go off. And it's like, you know, the casualty rates, I'm like, how many people die in a weekend in Chicago, right? How many people die in New York, right? It's like, you know, you're looking at, you know, shit, you know, dozens a weekend, right? So it's like, but again, we accept that because, oh, you know, that's just gang violence. That's just this, that's just that. I mean, it's just because it's gang violence doesn't mean it's good, you know, right? I'm like, I don't understand. People are dying and people are getting seriously injured. And it's like, yeah, that's okay. And, you know, now eventually, you know, shit bleeds over. Right. So, you know, it's gonna, because look, everything looks to expand and grow. That's the nature of things. You know,
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned the process of revolution. That's obviously a much bigger, better discussion for another time. But there is a legitimate process to revolution, right? And we're well in it.
yeah, you can feel it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, look, man. I've said this before. Like, I was in a position where I could just kind of wait and see with the whole vaccine thing, and the way it came out. I mean, we never did it, but but the way that we felt at that time, with the winter of the dead, these people, with the media, coming at us like, oh, we're the reason grandma's dying, all that shit. And I felt like, I'm like, holy shit, I never thought that we would get to a point where I totally understood how Nazi Germany happened. I totally, at like that moment in time, I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. I'm like, here I am, people are like, round them up. How many people, if they gave an order to round up people who weren't vaccinated back in a couple of years ago, how many people would have fucking supported it?
There were a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And that's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And these are people that you knew. These are friends, friends that were like, well, and I'm like, because there's like this air of, once you add an element of, oh, this is life or death, so you should do this, then it becomes a whole other thing. I mean, dude, you get power outage for like 3 or 4 days. People fucking fight over toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
I remember that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, after Katrina, holy shit, dude. We had up here, we had, Sandy. It was, for like, 4 or 5 days. My mom, at the time, she was like fucking like pushing 80. She's like, I'm getting into an argument with somebody at the gas station. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're by yourself. Like, what are you doing?
I think I got this.
Right.
Yeah, it's something I would talk about a lot with, especially kids. Talking about emergency preparation and like survival skills and stuff like that. And I'd always tell them, you think your neighbors are nice now, but wait until there's no electricity, there's no water, there's no food. They're gonna turn real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's like, okay, I don't know. You always keep a good stockpile of stuff that can.
Yeah, actually, there's something you can do if you want to do a really interesting training. Is because people are so freaked out when they don't have food or water. Is go on like a 3-day dry fast, like just to see how you feel, and it's not really that big a deal. You're not going to freaking starve. You're not going to die. You'll be fine. So if you can encourage people to try to go on a 3-day dry fast, they'll be the people that aren't freaking out when you don't have food around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just as an aside, this would be like, I'll do a 5-day for like twice a year. Right.
Yeah.
Just to, just the usual shit. But you realize like, yeah, I mean, we're so used to having everything like right there. You can snack, you can grab something, you do like, dude, I go, you're not going to die. You're going to be fine. You can still be able to work out. You'll be able to move around. I go, in fact, you're going to probably feel pretty good at some point. But yeah. But it becomes when it becomes life or death, right? When that carton of milk becomes like, oh my God, I don't feed my family. Now it's not about the milk. It's about you're preventing me from protecting and feeding my family.
Yeah, it's done more than 3 days, right? Now you're looking at 2 weeks or a week and a half. When the average American's only got, enough groceries in their cupboards to last like 5 days or whatever. And it's when another 5 days, and you're like, where's the food? And now you're starting to actually get hungry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's where, that's like, where we're, and that's where we're at. I mean, it's like people have like, we've become so comfortable in a way where like these issues all of a sudden are life and death until now they are life and death. Which is,
and to cycle it back to like what we've been talking about, these people who are starting to get frustrated and fed up with, what's going on in their cities and their nations is, you talk about that life and death feeling, right? They're talking about, Chicago, they're living on the streets. They have no food. They have no shelter. They have no electricity. To them, it's life and death. And here you have all these people that came in illegally and they're getting $6,000 to $8,000 a month, new clothes, new cars, everything's taken care of, free health care. And some dudes who's been there for 20 years is now living on the street, right? That now becomes a life and death perception, right?
Yeah. And that's I can't believe that's actually fucking happening. It's insane that, everyone's got to we all got to pay for fucking school. We all got to pay for healthcare. Think about if that, there's people that are homeless, that it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing with our, what are we doing with our veterans? What are we doing with it's the whole thing is so much, you get every time I hear about money going out of this fucking country, I lose my shit. I really do. Because it's, we know what's happening. We know people who, are struggling, right? And, you're here for nothing. We got to take care of, I don't give a shit. Well, every country should take care of its own first, period. Flat out. I don't give a shit if it's United States or whatever. It's that's it. And especially if you have the means to do it, you're watching it just fucking float, out the goddamn door. So I don't know. So yeah. So again, we solved nothing.
What was the name of that fucking documentary again, Joe?
What's up?
What was the name of that documentary or whatever that you were talking about again?
Called Treason. I don't know when it's coming out. He's still in the process of making it. Like I said, I watched an interview where someone was interviewing him for the upcoming documentary, and he had just got back from Chicago that weekend and was just talking all about what he experienced in Chicago. Yeah, it's called Treason. So I'm sure if you Googled it, you'd probably find it.
All right. Before we jump off, I just want to look at some of the comments here. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Tim Marshall, one of the other instructors, he's even Zuckerberg admitted that, he's pressured to censor stuff about COVID. I'm sure we all saw that, which I think is, hey, for what it's worth, he said it. He also said shit about the election and what was going on with the laptop and the other stuff. So at least he's like, fuck you, government, get out of here. And by the way, Zuck, thank Elon for that, because, without Elon, buying Twitter, I mean, seriously, dude, none of this shit's happening. And yeah, and Ty writes, well, the thing is, not only do the cops do that sometimes, politicians do that, like Adam Schiff, I don't know who he is, and a few people like that, they would just say a pure lie and never any consequences. Yeah, I mean, well, politicians lie. I mean, they're not, everybody's fact checking everybody, and then it just, dude, honestly, you zone out. Personally, I'm like, yeah, okay, right, I know that's not true, and then you're like, if I hear the term gaslighting one more time, I may light myself on fire. I'm fucking done with that. But yeah, I get it. It's like, there's nothing to see here. The fucking border is what it is. We just talked about it, but everybody does. It's no, it's been the best it's ever been because I said it. Okay, thanks. Moving on. It's nuts. Tim writes, the cartels have been ever busy since El Mayo got arrested. Who's El Mayo? Okay, I don't know. I'm getting to watch some of it up close. I don't think Tim is in the United States. So, no. Yeah. So, yeah, he's again one of our instructors. All right, fellas. So that's it. Thanks for joining us. Again, guys, continue to watch, comment, and I'm done. We're done. All right, guys. Until next time, train honestly and all that stuff. All right, peace.